Hello and welcome to the Gaggle, what we challenge, and if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, there's an absolute uproar has broken out. I would say mostly in the conservative world, but elsewhere as well, over an interview conducted by Tucker Carlson over a Lutheran pastor from Bethlehem, obviously a Palestinian, with Munther Isaac, and the gravamen of the attack. I mean, first of all, there's obviously the neocons are enraged because Munther Isaac pointed out that Palestinian Christians, who though a tiny minority within Palestine, are nonetheless Christians, and nonetheless they are persecuted. So he pointed that out, which is not at all, it goes according to the neocon script, because they have to say that Israel is the advanced party of the Judeo-Christian civilization, is fighting for us against the Muslim Brotherhood, Islamists, jihadis, the mullahs, the entire kind of terrifying,
the mosaic, yes,
of Islamism, and it's there. Pluckily, Israel is fighting for us. So when he says, "Well, the Christians are persecuting and getting killed, and churches are getting destroyed," then that causes shock, and that's why John Podhoretz sent out a tweet calling Tucker Carlson anti-Semitic filth. Charmingly, and
well, that's real classy.
Real classy, exactly. And then others have attacked him, like that Republican congressman with the one eye.
Oh God, yeah. We call them patches here on this.
Exactly.
Crenshaw.
The Crenshaw, exactly. And but I think when we can also talk about the criticism of Tucker that has come from people like Crystal Ball and from the Young Turks. So, but let's just first we'll take a look at a little bit of the interview.
A consistent but almost never noted theme of American foreign policy is that it is always the Christians who suffer. When there's a war abroad that the United States is funding, it is Christians who tend to die disproportionately. And this goes back a long way, 60 years really, to Vietnam, where Catholics in that country were massacred, but it's accelerated. So, for example, during the more than a decade the U.S. government spent occupying Iraq, the ancient Christian community of Iraq was completely devastated. 9 out of 10 of them are no longer there. They're gone. That was an effect of our foreign policy, but it was almost never noted in the United States and almost never, ever even mentioned by Christian clergy in this country, many of whom supported that war and that occupation. Why is that? Maybe because it wasn't. Virtually no one in any American church said anything when Christians were killed in Syria, very often by Islamic extremists, paid for by the United States. But nobody said anything, and anyone who did was denounced as a kook or a bigot somehow. Standing up for Christians was not allowed in the U.S. media. We saw that firsthand. And so, once again, it continued. In Ukraine, where the U.S. government has sent far more than $100 billion to the Ukrainian government, and what happened? What did that government do? Well, it banned an entire Christian denomination. The Zelensky government is busy throwing Orthodox priests and nuns in jail, and the army raid churches. But again, not a word. But what about Gaza? What about the entire region in the Middle East, where, of course, there's very intense fighting going on? Many Christian churches in the United States, particularly evangelical churches, support that. But there is virtually never a word about the Christians who live there, the ancient Christian community in Gaza, the West Bank, and Israel proper. So, because no one has said a word, there has been great suffering among the Christian population in that region. In October, a Greek Orthodox church in the Gaza Strip was hit by an airstrike. We're showing the video now. The church is in ruins. At least 17 people were killed that day. And yet, that was hardly the first time that fighting in that region killed Christians. You'll remember the Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem almost 20 years ago, where a clergyman was killed in the church with American weapons, and Christian clergy in our country said nothing. And you may be asking yourself, well, wait a second. If Christian leaders won't stand up for the lives of Christians, why have them in the first place? And that's probably a good question. So you would think that in Congress, where there are many self-professed Christians, somebody might be piping up on behalf of their brethren in the Holy Land, but no, just the opposite, in fact. For example, at a town hall event last month, Michigan Congressman Tim Walberg, a former evangelical pastor, said he would like to see the region treated like Hiroshima was treated. Watch this.
We shouldn't be spending a dime on humanitarian aid. I agree. It should be like Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Get over quick. The same should be in Ukraine. Defeat Putin quick. Instead of 80% of our funding for Ukraine being used for humanitarian purposes, it should be 80%, 100% to wipe out Russian forces, if that's what we want to do.
So to be clear, as a theological matter, Christianity is not the religion of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It's the religion among all world religions that uniquely abhors mass killing. In fact, it is the religion that abhors mass killing. There's no excuse for that from a Christian perspective. And here we have a former pastor calling for it. But again, how are the Christians doing in that region, in Gaza, the West Bank, and in Israel proper? We almost never hear from them. And so we thought it would be interesting and maybe edifying to hear from one right now. Reverend Munther Isaac is the pastor at the Evangelical Lutheran Christian Church in Bethlehem, and we're honored to have him join us. Father Isaac, thank you very much for coming on. So let me just ask you a broad question to start. How are Christians in the Holy Land, in the three places I mentioned, West Bank, Israel proper, and Gaza, how are they doing right now?
Yeah, first, thank you for having me. These are very, very difficult times, and it's been difficult for quite some time now. When I say difficult times, I'm not just only referring to October 7th, and the fact that right now we are fragmented into, as you explained, three territories: the West Bank, Gaza, and Israel proper. We can add East Jerusalem, which is a category in its own, explain one element of our situation, which is we're fragmented. So in my church, I have family members with relatives in Gaza, and they cannot even visit. Before the war, they could not visit and be with them. And this fragmentation is, as I said, one element of the situation. One of the biggest problems we're facing right now is the deterioration of our number. People keep leaving because of the political reality. Life under a very harsh Israeli military occupation is difficult to bear, and as a result, many young.
Okay, so then I want to go to an interesting moment towards the end.
Well, his summation was brilliant.
I agree. I thought it was really, really good.
Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. All right. So here.
If you wake up in the morning and decide that your
That's it.
Christian faith requires you to support a foreign government blowing up churches and killing Christians, I think you've lost the thread.
Yep.
Just to end on this, if you had a message for Christian leaders in the United States, whether in government or in churches or citizens who care about the religion and their fellow Christians, what would it be?
It would be to remind them that when the state of Israel was created, it was not created on an empty land. It was created on a land that had millions of indigenous Palestinians there, including Palestinian Christians. And that state they support, that state they celebrated as a fulfillment of prophecy and a sign of God's state to the Jewish people. For it to become a state, hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, including Palestinian Christians, were forced to leave and have never returned. Churches were closed. A friend of mine did a research and counted more than 30 churches that were closed when Israel was created because Palestinians were expelled from the land. Our numbers continue to be in decline. So we're pleading that come and listen, come and talk to us. And my message to Christian leaders right now is there is a very, very brutal war taking place in Gaza, a war that I described using the word genocide, because it's a war that has used even starvation as a mean, and fellow Christians are suffering because of that war. It's time that Christian leaders recognize that wars is not the way, whether in Iraq and Afghanistan and Libya. I mean, when will we learn that war does not help? When will we take Jesus's words seriously about being peacemakers, about being merciful? There must be other ways. And so it would be an invitation to listen, to learn more, and to avoid very shallow and simplistic perspectives that are not based on scripture itself, but more based on political equations. And I would plea right now, and I will continue to plead, that we need to stop this war in Gaza. It's killing many, many children, women, innocent lives. It has to stop. There must be other ways. And as a follower of Christ, we have to pursue the path of peace and justice, and we have to avoid simplistic polarizations, good and evil. Come and listen, come and understand what's happening. And I plead, as a Christian pastor from Bethlehem, I plead that you come and listen.
Okay, so I think it was a long interview, so I just should highlights of it, and I just want to mention. I mean, obviously, we know what the neocons attacked, but the criticism that's come from Crystal Ball, and then I think Anna Kasparian, the woman at the Young Turks, is that, well, Tucker Carlson clearly is only interested in Christians. The only thing that the reason he's brought this up is that Christians, and so all this time, all the terrible things that were done to Muslims, Tucker Carlson really didn't care about that. He only cares about Christians, and I think
well, I mean,
that's
well, Ben Shapiro's only interested
misunderstanding.
Yeah. Ben Shapiro's just interested in Jews,
right? Exactly, but of course, that's a total misreading of it, and we can talk about that. So anyway, what was your take?
Number one, I think it was one of the best interviews I've ever seen in my life. Okay. Tucker Carlson he was involved in the interview just perfectly. He let the pastor speak. Okay. The criticism that I saw is that, don't you know, Tucker, X number of Christians live there, and this year. Yeah, whatever. I guess we can all do our research here, but what did the pastor say that was wrong? Right. Okay, no, a deal with what you were given. Okay, right. Not trying to second guess how much Tucker knows about the conflict. What I'm most gratified about, George, I don't think you learned anything particularly new. I didn't. Okay, I was aware of the kinds of discrimination. I saw it when I was in Israel myself against Christians. But what gives me great gratitude is that something like 92 million people have watched it. Okay, George, this is the first time for millions and millions and millions of people to hear this narrative, a narrative that people like ourselves, like our viewers, are interested in these events and have followed them very closely. Someone like Norman Finkelstein that spent half his life doing it, more than 50 years of his life. Okay, but for me, watching that, and this pastor is very eloquent. How often did he go, not once. It was smooth, really smooth. And for the first time, for millions of people, they heard a different narrative. And that's so very important, a narrative that I adhere to for the most part, okay? So that's what makes it very interesting. It wasn't groundbreaking as far as information, but it was fascinating to see a Palestinian Christian pastor from Bethlehem give his take.
Well, I think that's very important, because what Tucker did here was essentially to break ranks. If he just had on somebody who talked about all the things, the terrible things that were done with the Palestinians and so on, you say, yeah, we heard all that. It wouldn't be persuasive, because ultimately people say, yeah, but the Muslims, they're kind of crazy. I mean, they're all, and there's been a huge amount of propaganda put out by obviously the neocons, but by figures on the right, ostensibly anti-interventionists like Steve Bannon, who say Hamas is the Muslim Brotherhood, the Palestinians in Gaza are Hamas, they are the Muslim Brotherhood, and right behind them stands the mullahs, and they're the embodiment of evil. It's basically, it was going back to the Bush-Cheney era. We have to go back to essentially a crusade against these Islamists, and that's said by somebody who's a non-interventionist. So suddenly you have this person talking about the Christians. Again, yeah, they are a tiny minority, but they've been there for an awful long time, and they are having their churches destroyed. Those who say that Tucker's only interested in Christians just misses the point. The reason he had this person on is precisely, well, you can't reject it. You can't just simply say, oh, he's just some crazy guy with a turban who wants to blow you up. He said, no, this is a Christian. He's a Lutheran pastor. He's in Bethlehem, so, I mean, of all places. So I think that's very effective, and that is just breaking ranks. I mean, that is a history-making interview.
History-making interview, because there are many taboos in mainstream media, legacy media, up until the advent of the genocide in Gaza. There was mild criticism of Israel from time to time. Oh, the settlements are unfortunate. That's unfortunate. Okay, very, very mild. Kid gloves. But talking about discrimination against Christians is something no one has ever heard of before in the mainstream, and it was laid bare. And not dramatically, okay? It was very matter of fact, wasn't it? Okay. Again, that's what makes it even more powerful, right? Because it isn't the angry Arab that they like to show all the time. So yeah, well, I am really glad, because when we look at, obviously, at least from last count, 500,000 Democrats in their primary have written in uninstructed or not backing a candidate. And so, we see the fissures on the Democratic side, but the real fissures in the right too. And this is what's really made people very, very angry, because why should the U.S. government be supplying arms to its great ally in the region, right, Israel, right, when it persecutes Christians? And nobody wants to hear it. It's too uncomfortable, particularly since the evangelical right is fanatically pro-Israel. I mean, I've never really understood it. The way I look at it, it's Jesus bait. Because when the Messiah returns, well, they don't really care much about what happens to the Jews, do they? But it's a mechanism. It's bait to bring about a prophecy, and that's something people don't want people to talk. They certainly don't want the rank and file to talk about that.
No, I think that's right, and it's very important for that narrative. I mean, I saw a little bit of an interview with Victor Davis Hanson with Megyn Kelly, and I didn't see all of it, so I don't know whether he personally attacked Tucker, but he said, people are very ignorant by suggesting that Christians are somehow persecuted, that Israel in any way persecutes Christians. No, that's all ignorance, and so on. But even so, you can find on YouTube anywhere Christian nuns who are kind of being bullied by Israeli children. You actually see them. They're using physical violence against these nuns. I mean, it's there. Just go to YouTube, well, and they are there. So now you could say that there's a lot of Islamism, and they are against Christians and so on, and they're making life miserable for Christians. I think no one denies that. But this is Israel. This is your great ally. This is, you're bankrolling the state. The minimum you would expect, and I think that's what Tucker's saying, the minimum you would expect from a state that we're bankrolling is that it's going to protect our co-religionists.
A tiny percentage of the population.
Right, exactly.
No political threat to anyone whatsoever. No, there's also the despicable, disgusting tradition of being spat upon.
Yes.
That is something that is very, very common that Christians experience in Israel proper. Tucker just set the world on fire.
Yep.
And I watched it, and I was very, very moved. Okay, because I want the Republican. They don't have to they don't have any skin in the game right now because it's the Biden administration. Okay, so excuse me. Trump said, I think, in the last news cycle, Biden isn't doing enough for Israel.
Right.
We see this really sick, despicable game being
Yes.
played right now.
Yes.
Okay, I find it abhorrent that Trump would say something like that.
I find it, yeah, that's exactly right. And you're hearing more of this from the supposed Trumpians, whose selling point, the one thing they've been saying is non-interventionism, America first. In other words, we may have goodwill towards Israel, but it's not our fight. It's Israel's fight. It's a separate country. We're the United States. Israel is Israel. They're going to have to work out something by themselves, how to live with their neighbors, which is the argument we make about Ukraine. Ukraine has to figure out how to live with its neighbor. But instead, what Trump is saying here, and what Bannon says this all the time, every day on his show, is that Israel's fight is America's fight. And that somehow, that this great existential struggle, some struggle for Judeo-Christian civilization, is what's at stake in Gaza, which means America gets involved automatically. Well, if it's a Judeo-Christian civilization, that's going to bring America involved. So you're supposed to be a non-interventionist. You're supposed to be an America first. You're nothing of the sort. It's a big fraud.
Well, if the Judeo-Christian civilization is committing genocide, then I don't want anything to do with that civilization. I'm sorry, okay? I'm very emphatic about that. You want to go down that path, you're going to be hit with that argument, okay? And this is something that Tucker is trying to open people's eyes to. What values do we actually really have, okay? And for many people like Tucker, he is a believer. Where does he get his values from? He gets it from it's an ecclesiastical one. Okay, that's fine, and a lot of people do that because it's a good starting point. But you can't claim to have those values and support these kind of policies. And think about it, George. I mean, I don't want to go into the weeds a whole lot, but at the end of the 19th century, empires were shaking sabers over the protection of religious minorities in the Holy Land. Okay,
right. But that's a very interesting what you've just said, because the only one who ever did that was Russia. Because Russia was the only one that defended Christians in the Holy Land, Christians in Southeast Europe, in the Balkans. No one else did that. The British, the French, Germans, they were supporting the other side. They were supporting the Turks. They were supporting Islam. They never did anything for. And you could, in fact, argue, and I think it's a reasonable argument, that if it hadn't been for the British intervention after the Battle of San Stefano with the Congress of Berlin, when Russia's winnings were essentially taken away from them, if it hadn't been for that, there probably would not have been an Armenian massacre. I think the Turk, Christians could have been saved. It was a disastrous intervention by the British. Oh, we can't allow the Russians to gain all this territory. Well, it could have saved the Christians. So, and I think there's a record. I think Tucker went into that record. He talked about the Catholics in Vietnam. No one ever, that very rarely ever talked about the Catholics. But we talk about Syria, about Iraq. Hey, you've got, these are the oldest Christian communities in the world, and you basically are quite happy to see them wiped out. I mean, they're not part of your geostrategic equation.
One of the oldest churches in Christendom from the 5th century was in Gaza, and it was destroyed. We saw that in the video that Tucker showed. It made the news, but there wasn't a whole lot of outrage. I mean, if people were to hold to their so-called values, they'd say this must immediately stop. You're destroying churches now, okay? And I believe that these Christians in the Middle East for evangelicals in the West is just an annoyance, okay? Because it blurs, things get messy, it gets murky. And it's this, we're against the Islamic world. We're against, and that's the way they want it to be, and it's very easy to sell. But there's probably going to be a lot of evangelicals that like Tucker because I think he's genuine, and they're going to see this video, and I think a lot of them are going to be like, "What?
Yeah,
what?"
No, I think so, and I think it's and I think Max Blumenthal kind of sent out a kind of a lengthy tweet saying that this is a major breakthrough. You know, he could easily have brought on all kinds of Palestinian spokesmen, you know, Muslims and so on, wouldn't have had an impact because, you know, I mean, they're the people who come on the gray zone and so on. But to bring on a Lutheran pastor who is there, who lives there, lives in Bethlehem, that's a very big deal. And everyone knew there was a big deal, hence the fury of this attack, you know, anti-Semitic filth. I mean, you know, what exactly was there that was anti-Semitic? I mean, you know, I mean, what?
Well, did the pastor condemn anyone? Did he condemn Jews? No, he didn't.
Yeah, right. That's right.
As a matter of fact, he had the ultimate evangelical message. We should all live together in peace. Right. I mean, it's as simple as that.
Right.
But I'm absolutely convinced there's going to be millions and millions of Americans that are going to come across this, and they're going to say, "But we were told something different. Oh, we'd never been told this before."
Right.
Like I said in the beginning, you know, Max Blumenthal, Glenn Greenwald, you know, Jimmy Dore, you know, we can tell you this narrative, okay, with great ease, okay, but it doesn't make it into the evangelical space. Right. No. But Tucker, that's why this is groundbreaking, because he's in that space. Right. And he's filled it up with a lot of information and a lot of questions, I think. And that's why I think it's one of the best interviews I've ever seen in my entire life. And believe me, folks, George and I have seen a lot.
No, that's right. And I think it's also much more significant than Candace Owens, because I think Candace Owens is just not taken sufficiently seriously. I mean, I think she's somebody who has figured out how to make a lot of money. You know, she has a huge following, but she doesn't have, in any sense, of the kind of the intellectual weight, the intellectual gravitas of Tucker, and essentially just letting this pastor speak. I mean, that's
yeah. He did. See, Tucker practices the anti-Sean Hannity interview method, because outside of Tucker's interview, what would you figure the rest of the interview in some total, maybe 3.5 minutes you heard Tucker? Yeah. That's why it made it one of the best interviews I've ever watched in my life, because I actually got to listen to someone take their position, make their position, and very convincingly, without offending anyone.
Right. Yeah, no, I think so. And I just finding it amusing. This I mean, I understand, you know, the Israel firsters, why they're enraged, but I'm sort of amused by these, you know, the Young Turks and Crystal Ball, and then this guy Kyle Kulinski, who want to be nasty about Tucker, just want to say mean things about him, but what they say just seems so stupid. Oh, he only cares about Christians. No evidence of that. You never said I only care about. He's just bringing up this one issue. And there's I wonder if he'd have done it had he been at Fox News. Yeah, but he's not at Fox News. That's the point. He's not at Fox News. Probably, you know, if maybe he would have done it at Fox News, but he'd have been shown the door very quickly. I mean, that's the point. I mean, he was doing so many things at Fox News that the Murdochs were bound to push him out. You know, so I can see him doing it at Fox News, and that would have been one more reason to push him out. So it was a lot of just stupid points, just because, well, Tucker is somehow right wing, and we don't really like right wing, so we got to, you know, we got to keep saying nasty things. I mean, I think Crystal Ball says something like, "Well, I don't think much of Tucker Carlson." Well, who cares what you think? I mean, well, I don't think much of him. Okay, well, I don't think much of you.
How many videos have you made, Crystal, that have gotten 92 million views? Right. Okay. Right. I mean, Kyle Kulinski, Crystal Ball, the Young Turks, God, they're all part of their cults. Okay. Right. They're always looking for a political angle. They're looking for a talking point.
That's right.
That interview had nothing to do with any of those things at all.
Right.
Okay. Tucker didn't make any demands or anything else. He said, essentially, here's a narrative I'd like you to hear, and you draw your own conclusions, okay? These people are so cultish. They're always looking for the right angle. This must somehow be pro-Trump or something. These people are diseased, okay? That interview was such a breath of fresh air. I felt emotion inside listening to this guy. It's like, you got finally, you know, after all of this misery,
Right.
70 years of misery, you're going to be given the best platform on the planet,
Right.
and you're going to be heard.
Right.
It's
No,
amazing.
yeah, that's exactly right. And I think again, Tucker's intro about how many times the West is somehow on the side of the Islamists, the worst people, the most radical Islamists, and against Christians. I mean, Tucker didn't bring up the Balkans and the wars in Yugoslavia, where again, you're explicitly on the side of of bin Laden. You helped bring bin Laden into Bosnia and Herzegovina. You were backing Islamist terrorists in Kosovo. This is what the West was doing. And so yeah, and Christians are always the least of your concerns. And so these people, these young Turk types, say, "Whoa, he's only bringing up Christians because it's all because of his white Christian nationalist America or whatever." Nothing whatever to do with any of that. But let me just ask you. I mean, what influence do you think this would have then in Trump world? I mean, will the Trump world now just simply go on embracing that Israel first, or do you think this is going to have an impact there?
I think this interview is like a very small pebble that was thrown far into a pond, and we're still seeing the ripples. This is not going to go away. This is going to be discussed. It's going to tear a lot of people. Like I said, the Democrats have their own thing, okay? Actually, I'm quite sympathetic to it, okay? I'm not looking for political points here. I'm looking for what I think is right, okay? But it's the GOP, its leadership and its base. Now, they have a lot to chew on right now, okay? And I think that is good, because Ben Shapiro doesn't speak for the Republican base. He doesn't, and he actually less and less so. Okay, because believe it or not, less because of Israel, but more because of free speech. Okay, it's very cavalier behavior. But the people like the Steve Bannon and this platform. Who started this platform?
David Rubin.
Dave Rubin's going to have to deal with this. Okay. In a way, people that have conservatives that have taken a much harder position, like Miss Owens, she's going to come out on top on this. Okay.
Well, I think that's interesting, because we're now used to the split on the issue of Ukraine, and so you've got the all the kind of Republicans, and then the Bannons and others who say, "Nah, nothing for Ukraine. That's Biden's war. We're not interested in it. Count us out." So we're used to that split. But this is a new one. This is because up until now on Israel, there was a united front. And the Republicans could feel actually a little smug and say, "Hey, well, the Democrats have a problem on Israel. We don't. We have a united front. We're all on board with Tel Aviv." And now this has emerged that there is now a split. So that's going to be very interesting, whether this split is going to escalate, and more voices are going to be heard as saying, "Hey, well, Israel's a separate country. If we're going to be America first, then basically let's be America first, not let's be Israel first."
One thing that I'd like to see happen, I don't know, because we're dealing with politicians, and politicians are the least developed of the human species. That's why they go into politics. They're greedy and usually stupid. But this will give some people a reason to maybe take a step back and look at public opinion, how people will find this abhorrent, what's going on, and maybe do a kind of a reassessment, and without being completely excommunicated. Maybe we'll give some people some backbone and start speaking about what should be done and what shouldn't be, and what should be stopped. Okay, I'm hoping that might help some people do it. Though this issue is just, you and I have talked about this so many times, privately. This is always a third rail issue. I mean, and I find it exhausting, because up until October 7th, you really couldn't have a decent conversation because everything has battle lines and everybody's got their ridiculous bumper sticker talking points. Now it's all blown open. And I can't think of anything. This interview is just so stellar compared to any kind of discussion we've been having when we've been observing for the last 6 months. This is a game changer. Okay.
Right. No, I agree, because even in the aftermath of the 9/11 attacks, you could say, yeah, there was a split on the right. You had the the overwhelming majority of the right, which supported the invasion of Iraq, and there were powerful voices on the right who were against it. That was Pat Buchanan, obviously. You had Robert Novak, and that disgusting character David Frum wrote an article in National Review about the unpatriotic right. He listed all the figures on the right who were unpatriotic. Really disgusting article. But at least that was just simply about invasion. I mean, you can say, hey, it's wrong to invade another country. It's not going to work. It's going to be unsuccessful. This is something different. That wasn't about Israel as such. This is about Israel as such. This actually raises the question: why exactly are we supporting this state? Particularly if the foreign policy we're committed to is America first. And I think that's a very interesting, and particularly Trump. I mean, you quoted this, suddenly he comes out, oh, Biden is betraying Israel. And this is the theme that's coming from Bannon. This is coming from Breitbart. This is, oh, somehow Biden is insufficiently supportive of Israel. He's selling out Israel. Utter nonsense. But
it's poison.
Yeah.
It's poison, George. It's absolute poison. And we had Lloyd Austin being asked by Tom Cotton, which I cannot stand. Is there any evidence that a genocide is being committed in Gaza? Well, we have no evidence of it, said the Secretary of Defense. That is going to enrage so many people. And what's really interesting, everyone, is that you have Tom Cotton, America First, the MAGA, friend of Donald Trump, and he's pitching softball questions to the opposition.
Right.
Okay, that's how corrupt it is when you get that at that level of politics. That's how corrupt it all is. When they're on the same team,
right.
Be really worried.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Yeah.
All right, Tucker Carlson, you outdid yourself. Okay, I think you did a service to humanity. Okay, and it was only just about Christians. No, it's about what's right and wrong.
Yeah.
We forget. We've been told that it's immaterial, it's tertiary, that's subjective. No,
right.
Sometimes it just gets down to that. And you know it in your gut. You know it in your gut when something's right or wrong of this magnitude.
Right.
Okay.
No, I think it was a very, very shrewd move by him to raise that issue. Hey, this is our ally, and we're supposed to be a Christian country, and we're supposed to care about how Christians are treated. So why exactly are we, sending all this arms and money and everything, and we're not stipulating as a condition, yeah, but you better not hurt the hair of a single Christian, which you would think that might be a condition that you would impose. They're not doing it. And I think that's the point he's making here, is that, hey, the least we could expect is that you would protect Christians, but no one is even raising that issue.
To end on this, which says a lot about Tucker Carlson and his team and their mission. This is the same pastor that gave a homily on Christmas Eve in Bethlehem. We've come across this man before, folks,
Mm-hmm.
and it was an amazing homily. It was breathtaking for me. And so here's a guy that really, rattled the cage.
Right.
It was reported, but who approached him? Who approached him to say, can you tell us more?
Yeah.
Because no, it's a third rail. You can't do that. Okay, he said it to his congregation. Okay, he can say whatever he wants to say. But then when you're given your platforms at the top of the pyramid, everyone, and you're given a space to convey what you live. Okay, that's genius on part of Tucker and his team. Genius, because that guy was out there. He was known, but nobody tapped him except for Tucker and his team. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah.
All right, everybody. This is the Peter and George, we're on the Gaggle. We are the Gaggle. We're on Local, so please go to thegaggle.locals.com. This is Friday. I'm reporting the sad news. I like Fridays, but for people that like George's live stream, you got time.
Yeah, exactly. Now the terrible hiatus begins. This ennui, the kind of the Weltschmerz, existential nothingness that's going to engulf gagglers until next Tuesday, 3 p.m. Eastern time. Then think about Apple. Think about this issue of the tip jar, which is becoming quite salient. I think he wants to do a whole podcast on the tip jar situation. So we don't want to devote entire podcast to tip jars. So if you have a few bob in your pocket, whip them out, dunk them into this the Buddy Apple tip jar. They're going to be happy for a little while. We're very grateful for all of your help, friendship, and support. The more you're able to donate, the more of these videos we can make, the more we can improve on the technology, and we can just calm them down a little bit, because it's really getting quite...
Look at those ears. Look how big those ears are.
Those ears are very big, and he's listening. Yeah, I don't hear any ka-chings. Where the ka-chings? So remember, if you like the Gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye.